The starting point for doing a picker, data source, and delegate is to go tell Swift here that I am going to implement UI picker view data source and UI picker view delegate. Okay, so I declare now that I implement these protocols, and now I've got an error because it says, oh, you told me you implement these protocols, but you don't conform to the protocols. Yeah, there are some things I need to implement down in these two sections here. We'll come to that in just a second. The other side of this is I need in my storyboard to tell the picker view who are your data source and delegate. So over here I've got a picker view, and if I look at the connections, you see I've got data source and delegate properties. Now, if I control drag on the picker view up to the view controller, you see it can be set to the data source or the delegate, or both. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to set it to the data source and to the delegate, and now you see those both show up as the settings view controller is the data source and the delegate for this picker view. So now it has to answer questions like, how many components do you have, and how many items are in each component, and so forth. So let's work on the data source as our starting point. So begin with number of components. So I start typing number, and you see the number of components is down here. So number of components in picker view, and what do I want for number of components? Well, I'm going to have hours, minutes, and AM, PM, and so it sounds like what I want is 3. So return 3. Now that's a magic number, and I've got some magic numbers here in my code. I've got 7 sitting there, and now I've got 3 sitting over here, and I don't really like that. So I think I'm going to want to create a structure for constants in here. So we'll come back to that in a minute here. But number of components is 3, and we still have our error. We don't yet fully conform to the protocol. So what else do we need? Well, we need a number of rows in component. So I'm going to start typing picker view. And now, just like the table view data source, we have these same things. Number of rows in component. Let's do that one next. Okay, so now I've got a component is going to be an integer, and it's going to be 0 based. So I'm going to have basically 3 different components. So 0, 1, and 2. So case 0, then I'm going to return, now how many hours are there? Well, if I'm doing AM, PM, there are 12 hours. Man, I've got magic numbers all over the place. Case 1. Okay, let's see. Case 1, I'm going to do how many minutes are there in an hour? Well, there are 60. And case 2, AM, PM, there are 2 possibilities there. And now, what about default? So I need to handle the default case because I need to guarantee that I return an integer. And now it'll stop complaining here. Yeah, okay. And by the way, we've fully implemented the protocol, at least sufficiently for the protocol to say yes, I'm implemented, and everything else is optional, but I have not implemented yet. Okay, so now next piece that we need. So it's going to want to know the title for a row for a particular component. So in the case of minutes, it's going to want to know, say, 0 and 1 and 2. In the case of hours, 1 to up to 12, that kind of thing. So let's just start building this out. Picker view, and it's going to want title for row for component. So again, I need to switch on component. And it's going to be the same cases, 0, 1, and 2. And all right, let's do the AM, PM. So, okay, so if the row is less than or equal to 0, then I'm going to say, well, that's AM. Otherwise, I'm going to say it's PM. Oh, and then I left out default. Default. Now, this returns an optional string, and so I can say return nil if it's none of these that I was expecting. Okay, so now let's implement the hours and the minutes. So for the hours, I want to say, well, I just want the row plus 1, but I want this as a string. How do I turn that into a string? Well, it's real easy to use string interpolation. Okay, so that's a possibility. And actually, I could do something very similar for minutes, although you may say, well, you gotta format that. So let's try formatting that with a leading 0 if it's a single digit. So how about we go to string and we look for the format constructor. And so if the format is %O2D, now we can plug in the row, let's see, row. It's just row. Yep, exactly the row. Okay, and so that should give me a 2-digit minute for each of the minutes. 00 up to 59. Okay, and is that enough? Well, let's see. Let's run it. Building. Loading. Comes settings. Hey, here we go. So 1 through 12. And here are all my minutes. And there's my AM, PM. All right, now, so we've got this displaying. Now we could complain about the width and some other things. So we may want to deal with this just a little bit differently still. But anyway, let's go and in our update UI, where we have this needs work, now we can set the information that we had bypassed before. So, let me get to a cheat sheet here. Okay, so picker view select row. So picker view dot select row. So it wants a row, a component, and animated. Now, I'm going to set animated to false. And the component, well, okay, so we have 3 components that we're going to do. So the first one is hours. So what do we want for hours? Well, we want hour index. And now, for the second component, we want the minutes index. And for the third component, we want is AM 0 else 1. Okay, let's run that and see if we get 7 AM selected. Well, we got 8 AM. And let's see here. Why is that? Oh, yeah, it's because the hour index is different from, okay, 7 as an index gives me 8 o'clock. 6 as an index gives me 7 o'clock. And, you know, while we're at it, let's change the minutes to 39 here. And let's go see if that comes up to 7:39 AM. And yes, it does. Okay, so it looks like the initialization is doing what we want it to do. We're going to change this one back to 0, so it's 7 AM. And okay, so we basically have the picker view data source. And now we need to deal with the fact that the user can select things. So on the select, okay, so there's a did select row in component. That's the method that we want to get. So picker view did select row. That one right there. Did select row in component. Okay, so what do we want to do in this case? Well, we want to say, let's figure out which component we're dealing with. Is it hour, minutes, or AM, PM? And then let's configure the model according to what just got selected there. So I'm going to say switch on component. No surprise, it's going to be case 0, case 1, and case 2. And for default, I'm just going to break. And for case 0, we're going to say, well, our index is equal to, and now I'm going to write a little helper function to, actually, no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not going to do that right now. So I'm just going to say did select row. So our index is the same as row. Minutes index. Okay, so 0 minutes is row 0, so that's also going to just be the row. And is AM is going to be row less than or equal to 0, true, else false. Okay, so that is what I want to do when they select a row in any of the components. I want to update the model accordingly. Now the other thing that I'm eventually going to want to do here is save settings. Okay, which we haven't written yet. All right, so there's one more piece here, and that is that I want to be able to control the row height. So currently the row height is looking okay, but I may want a little more spacing in here. So I'm going to start typing picker view, and now somewhere in here, there it is, row height for component. So in this case, I just want to return 30.0. A CG float is what it's asking for, 30.0. So I'll just say that my row height is 30 pixels, and when I run this thing, okay, so I have it looks like the row height that I'm expecting. Now the other little piece here is that I want to control the width. So let's go picker view width for component. There we go, width for component. So now I could do an individual width for each of these, but I'm just going to return 50.0 for each of them, for all of them, that is. And now I'll get the same 50 pixel width, which I think will work out nicely. Let's try it here. Yeah, and there, so it's narrower and it looks pretty decent. But I could customize the width for each of these if I felt like I wanted to do that. All right, having done this now, obviously I need to clean up all of this monkey business here. I've got these magic numbers floating everywhere, and don't want that. So let's go to constants, private struct, and I'm going to call this picker. And okay, so static let am pm count equal 2. Static let am equal the string am. Static let component width, which is going to be a CG float, equal 50.0. Static let initial hour index equals 6. Static let minutes. Oh, I'm not doing that one, sorry. I'll come back to that. So noon index equal 11. Static let number of hours equal 12. Static let number of minutes equal 60. Static let PM equal to string PM. Oops. Static let row height be a CG float. Oops. And assign it 30. And okay, that's good. All right, now let's go through and fix all this stuff. Picker dot initial hour index. And I don't have an initial minutes index because 0 is fine. It's not really a magic number in the same sense as most other numbers. Okay, now anywhere that I have these components, I'm going to want to say picker dot. Oh, where did I? Oh, yeah, that's right. I wanted another struct as well. Sorry. Private struct component. And the reason I'm not saying picker here is because I want this to read nicely when I write the code. So static let hours equal 0, let minutes equal 1, and PM equal 2. And now here I can say component dot hours, component dot minutes, component dot and PM. And you can see that I'm going to want to do that over and over and over again. Okay, so number of components is going to be component dot AMPM plus 1. Component dot hours. Picker dot number of hours. Pickers dot number of minutes. I'm sorry, this is boring. You can fast forward though. I hope you're on 2x speed. Minutes. PM. And return, let's see here, that's the count. So this is picker dot and PM count. And then default 0, okay, we'll let that stand the way it is. Just a little bit more in the refactor piece here. So component dot hours, component dot minutes, component dot AM PM, picker dot AM, picker dot PM, okay, go from the bottom here. So this is picker dot component width, picker dot row height, component dot AMPM, component dot minutes, component dot hours. Okay, I think, have I covered it? I think I mostly have. All right, that's enough for this video. We'll continue with actually saving the settings and stuff like that in the next video.